Yeah. All right. Well, let's just start now because we do have a cutoff time. And I just want to say good day, everyone. My name is Patty Menjivar, and welcome to this panel, which is titled Regenerative, Resilient, Equitable Climate Action in Los Angeles. So before I introduce this thoughtful and regenerative community leaders in this panel, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement. I want to pay honor and respect to the diverse Indigenous people connected to this unceded territory we call Los Angeles, who have inhabited this land for thousands of years, particularly the Tongva, Chumash, Gabrieleño tribes and their Indigenous neighbors. They are the original keepers of this land. Now, I am happy to share with all of you today's speakers. For sure, they are an amazing group of people, and I will tell you why. And I will introduce you, I will give you their bios, all three of them, and then they will start their presentations. They are definitely powerful, regenerative, equitable, resilient speakers, and they really see the future for the city of LA and beyond. I will start with Marta Segura. She is a strategic, resourceful, environmental, health, and justice advocate with a focus on social equity. She was appointed as the first ever climate emergency mobilization director for the city of Los Angeles Department of Public Works. She's also a leading expert in community health and engagement and has worked directly with public, philanthropic, private, institutional, and nonprofit sectors to design, implement, and drive community and policy-driven programs that promote a healthier and more engaged community. Ms. Segura also holds an MPH, a Master's of Public Health from UCLA. She previously served as the Program Officer for the California Endowment and the first Latina Program Director for UCLA Loesch and Labor Center. She was the first statewide organizing director in Los Angeles for Communities for a Better Environment during its nascent years in Southern California, and has ultimately promoted the role of a statewide and was ultimately promoted to the role of statewide associate director. Marta is also a daughter of the cannery workers and also knows too well what it's like to grow up with childhood asthma, excessive air pollution, living next to freeways, and segregated substandard schools, not unlike many frontline communities she collaborates with today. Segura also experienced housing displacement as a result of a project that demolished her entire neighborhood in San Jose. Next, we have Jamiah Hargins, who is a social entrepreneur, community leader, and self-proclaimed garden engineer. I believe many of you know him because he has been interviewed very much lately. He's been on BBC, LA Times last week, Times Magazine, and many other outlets for sure that you will see in the future. And he has been speaking on the leadership of food equity. And they've asked him why and how did he start this? And he fundamentally says for his daughter, he sees the future for his daughter on food equity. He's a founder of Crop Swap LA, which is determined to grow food on unused spaces, creating green jobs, independent economies, and nutrient-dense food. He recently opened the world's first water recycling front yard garden, which uses 8% of the water previously used for grass to grow over 600 plants for 35 families, recycling hundreds of gallons of water. His innovative business and design model gained the attention of the city of LA officials looking for sustainability solutions around water, food, and economic sustainability. So he was named Good Food Champion in 2019. He has also invented Toilet to Trees, a patented device that hooks onto your toilet and uses the clean water to grow fragrant and odor-eating plants. Jamiah is also a partner at Bro Capital, a financial technology company focused on Black millennial men who launch and invest in each other's businesses. Jamiah began his career as a stock and equity option trader, a corporate headhunter, and a nonprofit program leader. Jamiah is a graduate of the African American Board Leadership Institute at the University of Chicago and Columbia University. Personally, he's also a father of a 3-year-old beautiful daughter, a husband to a school administrator, and regularly practices Taoism. Last and definitely not least, Michael. He's another phenomenal contributor to the community on resilience. Michael Martinez is a former elementary school teacher, a father of two, and the father and executive director of LA Compost. Michael has grown LA Compost from a group of volunteers collecting organics using bikes to a decentralized network of community compost hubs that spans across the most populated county in the country. LA County. LA Compost now oversees over 30 compost hubs, all in partnership with existing communities, nonprofits, and organizations committed to healthy ecosystems, inclusive of food access and healthy community engagement. The mission of LA Compost is to restore lost connections to the soil and one another. So now with all that, I would like to start with Jamiah and his presentation. So Jamiah, please begin with your presentation and I will stop sharing.
Great. Well, hi, everybody. Nice to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Jamiah Hargins. I live here in the West Adams neighborhood. And I'm going to begin to share a presentation. It's kind of a photo slideshow of kind of a story about, I want to say it's a story about leadership and opportunity, but it's also a story about finding solutions in our community where we can. So I'll tell you how Crop Swap LA started and where we are right now, and you'll kind of get to see firsthand view of some of our newest projects. This may take about 7 minutes, and then I'll hop off to the next person. So this is my backyard where I first started gardening here in Los Angeles about 4 years, maybe 3 years ago. My daughter had come along, and I was really concerned about the food around this neighborhood and just knowing that it was a really delicate system, just a few places to get things. And I just wanted to grow food on my own, just in case we needed it. So I ended up having enough that the neighbors would come by and join us for what we called crop swaps. Crop swaps were kind of informal gardening get-togethers where we shared the extras that we had amongst each other, from eggs and baked goods to extra fruit from the trees, herbs, and my amazing chard that year that this one lady just couldn't get enough of before the end of the season was up. And we began picking fruit from people's trees, sharing them on our driveways and kind of just putting out for the community. It became to create basically an atmosphere of love and kindness and gentle nature that we all kind of want to see in each other. Ultimately, we opened the West Adams Farmers Market. I know a few of you have gone by there. It ran for about 1.5 years before COVID just recently has shut it down. But at the time, we really demonstrated that the community could pool its resources, from volunteers to extra fruit to entrepreneurs sharing different inventions that they had, and ultimately create a market on our own that represented the community. So that started a spirit of kind of who else can get involved in what we were doing. So we began starting a training program, showing folks, just really me learning what I needed to do these kinds of projects, and showing folks what I knew along the way. It created an atmosphere of giving. So you might remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a food shortage and there was a bunch of extra food as well. And so the local farms basically partnered with us to give some of that away to other places, such as South LA Cafe, and others around the city. And just that spirit of giving, that spirit of using resources got us recognition during that tough time. This is the award from the city for a good food champion. I was really honored by that. And then we were put in Real Simple magazine, and I like to show that just because it's like right next to Oprah's magazine. And then Time magazine, which was really amazing too. And lately, the LA Times front page, which was just really amazing last week. To anyone that is involved in that, thank you. I don't know how that happened, but we're just really grateful for the exposure of showing what we're doing here in the city. And this is the vision right here. This is the vision. If you can see clearly on the screen, there's a town in Switzerland that has almost committed all of its yardage to agriculture. And I just love this image, and it made me think about how Los Angeles could rectify a lot of the problems it has by doing something similar to this or on some kind of scale. So we applied for the LA 2050 competition. It was the Goldhurst Foundation basically has a voting competition for people. We got about 7,000 people that decided we could try to make front yard gardens happen in Los Angeles. We originally imagined having a whole street of front yard gardens, but instead we found this house and it was perfect for experimenting with water recycling and rain recapture. So essentially, this is my wife's colleague's house. They work at a school together, and generally was grass up front with two sides here. And what we've decided to do is transform it into a micro farm. This is a market garden, meaning it's intended to be sold. It's intended to be grown with efficiency. It's a regenerative garden using tactics and materials that are not only organic, but are regenerative in the terms of rehabilitating the environment around it. And working together biodynamically. And it's also a landscaping job that beautifies the area, adds some native, and of course uses the space to grow food. This is again the before picture looking kind of downhill. This is right in View Park, California, right by the Crenshaw Mall on Angeles Vista and Olympiad. And at this point, we have 600 plants growing there that is growing with the intention of selling to the neighborhood. Here's the original design. I'll walk you through how at the base, we kind of like put a water basin on both sides and then lined it with pond liner so that it operates like a pond would operate. This is a partnership with Enviroscape LA that does this routinely. Mike Garcia and his team trained us, and now we're prepared to do the next one. So it's been very great opportunity. This demonstrates how the water flows down and is covered by this landscaping. It's kind of stored underneath and then sprayed back on top in order to irrigate the crops. Here's the architectural design from a top bird's eye view, showing some of how the rows are designed. And it was exciting. You know, we've had such a great time, and you know, we're again talking about leadership and we're talking about community resources, right? So this is the homeowner, Michael Creer, who again is a teacher at my wife's school. He volunteered his yard at first, and I said, you know, I think there's a better way we can do this. How about we'll offer you a percentage of the revenue that we earn from this, and we'll pay for any extra water. And so he's gotten involved, and it's really an innovative business model of collaborating with a homeowner to do a landscaping job that is intended to grow food for the community and sustain itself on its own. It began by having trainees join us, friends of mine that were around and people that wanted to get involved, start by stripping off the grass. Then we dug our reservoirs, and you know, those holes needed to be about 7 feet deep, 7 feet wide, in order to then, you know, fit in the items that would take up space to make water fill up eventually. These are the things that take up space. They're called eco rain boxes, and they clip together before being set into the hole that you've made, and with pond liner, and ultimately that hole is kind of wrapped up again, and then padded with irrigation and lining with some rocks. And eventually the irrigation and the pump timer are on the outside, easily to access and adjust when you need to. The land we terraformed and required kind of carving into the land, creating the angles that we needed there, and then rolling out the pond liners that essentially were what we carried over and laid on top, so that, you know, those lines could be made. In terms of the soil socks, we stuffed these with about 85% vegetable mix, and then we put compost directly from Compost LA, with Mike Garcia and his team, who's on the line too, and you'll hear from later. So it's a collaboration I'd like to tell more about, but we've stuffed these soil socks in my front yard, and the way that they work is they are a recycled polypropylene material that is reusable, and food safe. And so we plug the socks with seedlings, and then we irrigate from the top. Now, what's nice about this is the water rolls right back down into the reservoir on that edge, on that decline that I showed you earlier. So what it essentially does is it aerates and fully drains the socks. They roll down underneath back into the reservoir. And plus this water, for those of you that know plants, this water is actually nutrient rich water. So there's foliar feeding happening. We've learned that the plants grow a lot faster in this fashion because the water has our nutrients in it already from the soil. And now it's getting into the leaves and growing them even faster than if it were just on the roots. We have here a greenhouse and a watering station. And you know, these are part-time employees now who harvest on site, wash on site, bag on site, and pass to the people right as they come by, you know, on their walks or on their journeys. We have lettuces, heads of lettuce, herbs, green onions. We've got tomatoes now. Here's some of the landscaping as I flow through that. You know, tomatoes now, we're putting eggplants, peppers. And again, this is the decline that is, it irrigates, it drains back down into the underground reservoir. And so at this point we have 50 members. We sold out right after that LA Times article. I'm pretty sure we can sustain 60 people with this food. It's hearty, it's rich, so it doesn't go through your household that quickly because it's really hearty and nutrient dense. It also has a longer shelf life than typical food because many folks don't know, but the moment you harvest lettuces, they begin to deplete their nutrient value, and it goes quickly, around 70% in the first 24 hours. So it's important that food is nearby and food is really right at the hands of how close it was harvested for the actual goal attainment of eating food. Like, what's the point of eating food other than making sure you attain the nutrients therein? So this is a Sante micro farm. That's the goal. It's hyper local, organically grown produce, crops grown with recycled rainwater using upcycled materials, and it's a Black American resistance to food apartheid. It's a partnership between, of course, my company, which is Black owned, the homeowner is Black owned, and even the tarp and the house is Black. So, you know, this is the first iteration of our movement, and you know, the next micro farm might be in another neighborhood, and we'll be partnering with other people for other purposes, growing different food, and that's what's beautiful about the movement. In fact, that's what's beautiful about the whole crop swap arrangement. When we had gardeners coming by our house, they'd share from their cultures, and it would become a beautiful arrangement. Just like this, these are trainees turned part-time employees of Crop Swap LA. And oh my goodness, that looks so delicious. This is just reminding me of how it was earlier in the season. we have new things growing now, and of course, you know, we have the capacity to grow even more. The business structure is that for those homeowners who are interested in doing this, they would cover the installation costs of having this done, as well as any, yeah. And then after they do that, we pay for management, and we pay for materials, all through the memberships that we sell together in the neighborhood. We now have, you know, 7 part-time employees. We've got probably 15 volunteers doing good work, and our families have given us positive feedback about the value that they're getting. On top of that, we donate 10% of our food to the community fridge that's right there in Lamert Park. And it allows us to, you know, give what I call a community tithe, and make sure that we're giving to those who can't take, in a way. Everything is environmental at Asante Micro Farm. For instance, this is actually wolf urine, if you can see that. It's coyote urine that we use as a deterrent to the possums and the raccoons that live in the gutters nearby, and we haven't had any problem. Yeah, we just set this around the garden. It's a natural deterrent that doesn't harm anyone. And here's the big kicker about our design and what we've done so far with the Asante Micro Farm. It is only using 8% of the water previously used on the grass grown, but now to grow food for the community. So it's dropped by 92% just by the turf removal, and only using 8% of what was originally used, but now to grow food for everybody. This is what it looks like over the course of the year. And in fact, this was actually just 1 month, our first month. This was in March, and you can see the water usage in blue that we ultimately used, and the red is what would have been used for the grass if we just still left the grass there. 8%. And over the year as well. Crop Swap LA is also doing some growing on tables and trays, thinking about residents who have concrete spaces, creating an opportunity to have hyper local food, and it's kind of managed and maintained by people who are just living in their backyards and have concrete spaces. So we're experimenting with that. We're also experimenting with growing food on the walls. So this is a garden wall kit that we put up for clients sometimes and allows them to have 36 plants or more growing at their house with irrigation. Later, we'll hear from my other colleague, Marta, and this is interesting because she's worked in park projects as well. I'm with Crop Swap LA. We're pushing for a park project that would hopefully add more green space to this red area that we see right here. This is a comparison for the other areas of the city and how much green space is available around them. Well, the project is in Leimert Park, and it's in an area called Marlton Square. Marlton Square is just northwest there of the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall. And the idea is, there's the Kaiser Permanente that's there, but the other spaces, the green spaces there, in fact, this is the gray spaces there, is city land that's unused. And, I have to say it's been unused for about 20 years, and, folks haven't figured out a way to use it. So I think, with our initiatives with Crop Swap LA and the intention to grow food on unused spaces, I think it makes a lot of sense to try to turn that into 50% parkland and 50% park. Because right now it looks a little bit abysmal, like you see there on the left side, and really we can do something more inspirational for ourselves, such as has been done here in Brooklyn, Dallas, and other parts of Los Angeles with unused spaces. So we hope to create something that's both culturally relevant to those who are here, those who were here, the history of Black American and Japanese American legacies in the area. And we've gotten about 15 or 1600 signatures on a petition. So, that's it for what we're doing. And, again, briefly on my conclusion, I'll say it's about leadership in some way, finding resources nearby you, being bold enough to try, and being true with what the wave of the moment needs, and I'll be happy to answer questions later down the road. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jamiah. Oh my goodness, you have comments right now. Christopher Locke said that, wow, this is dope. Sumi Gant said it's beautiful. Myself, I'm just extremely happy to see what you've created through Asante Microfarms. I mean, it touches on climate change through heat island effect, the creation of these spaces, equity through the food apartheid, and also community, having 60 members. And I definitely see more and more and more of that. I personally have many more questions for you, but I know due to time, I'm moving on to the next. So thank you so much, Jamiah. And we'll have questions for all three of you later on. So next is Michael Martinez and from LA Compost.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Jamiah, for that incredible presentation. And yes, very much excited to continue to collaborate and partner on more farms and just networks across the city. My presentation is just brief snapshot on the overview of our work and how we see it being community-led, community design, and both community co-creation involved. Our tagline with LA Compost is soil and people. We focus as much on the soil as the people involved in contributing to its overall health. And just want to start off with a simple graphic that we throw away a lot of material, and there's no such thing as a way. Things don't just disappear. Oftentimes those things have to find themselves in communities who don't often want the infrastructure that many of us know that has to process what we consider waste. So from a composting perspective, we very much don't like to use waste as within our vocabulary, but more so a resource. And how are these resources reinvested in our communities? And how are we seeing these as resources that can contribute both to soil health, which inevitably contributes to human health? Brief snapshot, compost is not soil. Compost adds to soil life. And when soil is not alive, the food is not alive. Compost adds structure, porosity, ability to hold water, capture carbon. It's like this magic, or it's incredible how nature knows what it's doing and how we can basically allow for nature to do what it's doing in beautiful urban environments like Los Angeles as well. For us at LA Compost, we like to tell a full story of food. I think what Jamiah is doing is absolutely incredible. And I know they're also working on composting efforts, which we're excited to support as well. But we want people to understand not just the farm to table, but what happens after the table experience. What happens after we consider food no longer having value? And where does it go? And how can it return back to this garden and table conversation? Here's a snapshot of LA County, a place where I was born and raised. I was born and raised next to the Puente Hills landfill in the San Gabriel Valley, which was not something that I realized the impact of just that natural environment. The Puente Hills landfill, as many of us know, took a third of LA County's material. There's 10 million of us, so over 3 million people's trash, waste, or resources were sent to these neighborhoods to bear the brunt of that. And then when it closed, we started to decide, well, where are we going to send it next? And I think it's time for us to really imagine what decentralized systems look like that are community empowered and benefiting the community in terms of job creation and infrastructure that actually supports green spaces. So when I think about LA County, I think about how it's intricately connected to just the freeway system. Unfortunately, these freeways are in red, which just takes my mind back to redlining, but like many of us in LA are naturally have the freeway system within our vocabulary. Oh, I'm going to take the 2 to the 5 to the 110 to whatever, right? But for me, I see this picture and I see what's happening under the ground. Underneath our feet, there's this beautiful thing called this mycorrhizal fungi network. It's basically the internet or freeway system below our feet. And what's happening is magical. It's fungi literally communicating, sharing, offering water, nutrients, and literally allowing for the overall wholeness, the whole community or forest or ecosystem to thrive. And to me, that's beautiful because it gives us a glimpse of what can happen above the ground. There's 10 million of us here in LA, and I believe the beautiful soil network that's happening below our feet can happen above the ground by this human network of Angelinos from Catalina Island to Pomona, from the San Fernando Valley to Southeast Los Angeles and Harbor District. I think the beauty of LA is the diversity of people who call it home. Just like I often say, the beauty of a compost pile comes from the collective diversity of ingredients that make up this pile. We've kind of followed this model and we've established a decentralized network of community-based infrastructure across LA County. It could be a school, a church, community garden, housing project, art center, park, anywhere where there's food, people, and the ability to tell the full story of food. We come along and partner along with community organizations who built a level of trust and transparency in that community to really support with composting and greening efforts. Well, another thing that we've also done is we've hired from within the community. So I started this on my bike and now we're 17 people, all from the different parts of Los Angeles. And we have folks who are born and raised or have worked for 10 plus years in those neighborhoods, facilitating the work that is happening in those neighborhoods. We focus on 3 program areas, and I'll give a brief snapshot of one of our staff. This is Jonathan Galendez, born and raised in South Central Los Angeles, went to Carver Middle School. He is now the garden and compost and farm manager of that space. He also helped to lead one of our newest program called a Soil Farmer Program. LA Compost functions in 3 buckets, focus on individual, community, and regional. And I'm going to briefly go through the individual offerings. We often focus on like community hubs, and that was the bread and butter of what we did. But this past year, we focused on a soil farmer program. How do we support homes and neighborhoods and spaces to increase green spaces in parkways, vacant lots, easements, backside and front yards? One of the things I think about with COVID and the stay-at-home order, quarantining and staying at home was different for all of us, right? If we have a space that is spacious and a yard that allows us to just rest and be and breathe, that's one thing. But for a lot of families across our city, apartment dwellers, townhouse renters, not knowing, like not really having housing security, how do we create joy in their spaces as well? How do we ensure that they are also supported with soil, food, and equitable like connections and community engagement? So we created this Soil Farmer Project where we basically allowed them to choose what they wanted, allowed them to create the space that they desired, and establish a network across the South Central Los Angeles community next to Carver Middle School. So it's not just build and peace out, it's build and support and connect. And if they need mulch, if they need seedlings, if they need seeds or compost, Johnny, who is also from that neighborhood, is kind of the facilitator of that work. We also lead workshops pre and during COVID. We launched a farmers market food scrap collection program that was listed in the Green New Deal, and they want to see that happen across all farmers markets in the city. And during COVID, we kind of even established these drive up, drop off opportunities to capture food scraps, even during times like these. Every Sunday, we engage with anywhere from 400 to 500 families, capturing anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 pounds of food scraps, and all that's processed within 2 miles away. The community bucket of our programs is focused on community hubs. Like I said, museums, schools, universities, anywhere where there's food and the ability to tell the full story of food through compost. We partner with community orgs to really allow for these cooperative models to take place. And then our last region, and I apologize for speaking so fast, I just want to be conscious of time in your Saturday morning, is our regional model. And these take place at urban farms and parks. We currently have 5 of these, and we're excited that we just introduced a motion called Regenerate LA that's actually going to focus on building regional capacity at parks. It took me a year and a half, but I finally got the green light to open up a new regional community, a new regional hub at Griffith Park, one of the largest urban parks in the country, 4,000 acres. And we are breaking ground next week. This park is going to create more jobs, create more compost for the park, for local growers, as well as more capacity to process locally versus sending this material out far away. I think this work can happen anywhere. One of the hubs that I'm most proud about is just hubs that are taking place in housing projects. There's already a level of resiliency just within how folks respond to just how they're treated, how trees are sprayed, how they're cut down. And Mar Vista Gardens is just one example of creating the future that they hope to see and creating the environment and the realities that they want to live in. This work is intergenerational. It doesn't matter if you're 4 or 104, there's something for you to do. And I just really believe that Los Angeles, as diverse as it is going to come up with Jamiah's presentation and Martha's talk. We are dealing with complex issues. And I think that requires us to not create complicated solutions, but complex solutions that think outside the box, solutions that engage the neighborhood and go against the way things usually are done, because those don't seem to be working. So this is just a snapshot of what I've been working on. It's just called Composters of LA. Every time I work with a volunteer, I take a portrait photo of them with their permission, of course, ask them for their zip code and why compost, to really just see the breadth and diversity and beauty of our great city and why people are so engaged with this. Some answers are because I have kids, some answers are why not, and some give a thesis statement on why it's so beautiful, restorative, and healing both for mind, body, and spirit. This is my team from last year. Very proud of that. We look and represent this city from all its parts. And I just very much believe that this past year, we've experienced a lot of pain, death, and hurt. And I just want to remind us that although compost, there's a lot of demystifying that needs to take place. I think compost is really beautiful in that it invites the collective imperfections of everything to create something that is whole, to create something that doesn't have to be celebrated, to create something that gives itself away, that is very selfless and supports the life around it. And I'm just so excited with the work that we've been able to do and accomplish, and so excited about the partnerships that we're going to continue to make both with city, county, and state. This past year, the state awarded the community composters across California over a $1.5 million grant to facilitate this work. This was the same organization that was kind of hesitant with our work 7 years ago is now praising this work. So I very much believe that the people that may think you're a little crazy or out of line are the very folks that are going to be singing your praises. So to Jamiah, Marta, and myself and everyone in this room, keep on keeping on, and I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michael, for being that crazy one where now people praise you. So thank you. And yes, your cooperative model has been so successful, and congratulations on the win with Griffith Park. And also congratulations on the food scrap collection that is also being featured on the New Green LA, which I myself am excited because I actually have a compost bin here in my apartment building. So to know it's part now of a system that you've created. So congratulations. Again, I have so many questions for you, but due to time, I'm going to move on to the next, but you do have amazing comments. Drew Freeman said, beautiful visual document. Christopher Locke said, love this. And Aim Flurney said, thank you, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. So thank you, Michael. Next is Marta Segura, who is our Director for Climate Emergency Mobilization here in the city of LA, which is such a powerful new role here in the city of LA for our communities. So next, Marta Segura. Thank you, Marta.
Hi, everyone, again. I'm just really thrilled and inspired right now from everything that Jamiah and Michael have shared with us. And it's really exciting to see such powerful leaders in our communities that really care, not about, these are social enterprises, right? Whether they're nonprofit or for-profit, these are social enterprises that are creating social cohesion, that are really concerned about bringing equitable green jobs to our communities, not just because it's a buzzword, but because they see the importance of integrating and networking people, plants, and nature to create a sustainable, regenerative future for Los Angeles, and provide a model really for the rest of the state and the rest of the nation and possibly the world. The more projects that we see like this throughout Los Angeles, the more that I have hope that we can create what we're calling resilience hubs, because these resilience hubs are very, intersectional. They absolutely need people like Michael and Jamiah and their volunteers and their workers who are the hubs and the spokes to these beautiful projects, so that we can continue to add more resilience and more resources to these communities. When I worked in the foundation world, we had this term that we called absorptive capacity of an organization to take on resources. The same thing is true for community. If it doesn't have leaders like Michael and Jamiah, then they're considered a community without an absorptive capacity for funding and investments. And that's why it's so great that this conference is highlighting their work, because we need to definitely invest in these projects and these organizations so that we can also see the other possibilities. Like when Jamiah was talking about the garden here in South Los Angeles, I actually live in View Heights, so not too far from the Crenshaw Mall. I thought, we could not only put a garden there and maybe a farmer's market, but we can have community microgrids for renewable energy infrastructure, because it's become increasingly clear post-pandemic that shock events like the pandemic or other natural disasters, not only exposes the weaknesses in our systems, but the weaknesses in social cohesion, but also the opportunities for the city and other local governments and state governments to reimagine a different kind of Los Angeles, where we can create not just economic opportunities, but really community building opportunities. And that would then lead to the resilience that we need to see in Los Angeles to be able to counteract future shock events, because there will be more, the governments and CDC have projected future pandemics. Of course, we've been preparing for earthquake, we've been preparing for other natural disasters. But I don't believe that all the equipment in the world and all the funding in the world can prepare us. What will prepare us is communities coming together and being supportive of each other, working on projects like LA Compost, working on projects like Crop Swap LA, and other organizations, right, like Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, Communities for a Better Environment. All of these have provided us models of what is possible. And when we begin to listen more to these models and replicate them versus just invest in major developments and how developments can, bring economic revitalization to community, when we shift that power to minds and visionaries like Michael Martinez and Jamiah Hargins, then we actually begin to build that social cohesion. That's my belief. And I believe that's why the Office of Climate Emergency Mobilization exists. We came into existence because of environmental justice and economic justice organizations pushing for innovative governance models that would push for models such as these, so that they become our primary wisdom in how we build community, right? So I didn't say enough about what the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office and all the years that it took to create and build. I definitely want to thank Councilmember Koretz and Mayor Garcetti and Councilmember Mitchell Farrell, who's the chair of Energy and Environment Committee, because it takes the whole entire village, right, of the city and of the community to work together to ensure that we strengthen the capacity of community leadership, of community-driven organizations, so that we are resilient and prepare for this future. So I'll leave it there, because again, I could say a lot more, but I think I think I want to remain inspired and stay on the theme of these models and go back to any questions that there might be for Michael and Jamiah.
Thank you so much, Marta, for that. I'm definitely what you just said in regards to investing in this model definitely shifts the power to the community. And for me, knowing through your history, through what you've done, through your community work, really shows that there is now a shift in power because you're at the helm right now. So I look forward to how your inspiration and what you built already creates definitely a climate ready mobilization for our people of color. And thank you, Martha. Now, and also Amy Flores says, thanks, exclamation mark, for what you just said, which is very powerful. Now I would like to move into the Q&A questions. We do have a couple of questions already from you all, but I would like to start with one for the panel and then go into the questions that were asked by a couple of you. I have a question in regards to earlier this year, as we saw, there was a major climate hazard affect Texas and a lot of our central states. This again shows, and also our pandemic last year. This again shows the needs and actions from frontline vulnerable communities. How do you see your organization supporting immediate needs to prepare for climate change, immediate mobilization scenarios such as heat waves, fires, massive precipitation, sea level rise? So again, how do you see your organizations supporting those immediate needs? So we could start with Michael.
Yeah, I think I go back to like decentralized support. And when I think about resilience, I think about human wholeness and health. And I think about co-creative solutions that focus on door-to-door, block-to-block approaches. Resources are available. How quickly they get to communities, specifically communities of color or certain zip codes across the city, county, and country, vary very much from just the things we see now that aren't emergent, whether it's a pothole or redoing a street or a down line, right? What's the response times across zip codes, across these regions? But as far as what we're doing with LA Compost, very much focused on food and connection. There's something about knowing people by name. There's something about knowing when something's going wrong, to be able to support one another, knowing where resources are available, having contact information of one another. I know the others within this panel can offer some great insight as well, but there's been a lot of thought around, I know Martha previously mentioned like cooling centers and micro hubs and micro infrastructure. And I think what we're trying to do is connect people to all of that, capacitate them to have that at their individual household. But I referenced in my presentation, like the mycorrhizal fungi support when a tree is getting cut down or is on fire, it moves nutrients to those or warns or communicates with those as well. And I feel for us, how do we do that above the ground? How do we communicate, engage in dialogue, and co-create community-based solutions to respond?
Great.
Fantastic, fantastic, Michael. I love that analogy. It's so real. And you know, at Crop Swap LA, how we're kind of preparing for resilience is more recently the water recycling aspect of our designs. We've committed to really focus on those as what we do now because of the context of Los Angeles. I understand that we get most of our water from the Colorado River Basin, and that it's quite an untenable situation. So, you know, I think it's more likely that we invest in rainwater capture or water reuse in our designs and our food designs, our food production. So we really want to, you know, emphasize, of course, turf removal is great, but if you can use the space to grow food, it's even better because it's not a basic garden that loses the water that you use. It's something that captures and reuses its own water connected to the city water and rainwater. So that's really, you know, useful for the family in case there's an issue. They could drink that with the proper tools. And we could, you know, keep that water pumping. Even if water got shut off here, we could continue to grow food in that yard. So in South LA, unfortunately, many of us are aware that on Slauson, there's a Ralph's that's closing down. A lot of people rely upon that Ralph's, and it's being done because the leadership said they didn't want to pay the hazard pay for COVID to their employees. And, I think it looked like it was a retaliatory situation, so I just don't want to be exposed to any of that. I think these front yard garden systems allow us a lot of separation from that drama and that allegiance, and that we can kind of retake what we want as a community. Like I said, we did it that way for Asante. The next one may be in Koreatown, and we may do it a different way for the family if their culture is different. It can reflect what Los Angeles really is, instead of being burdened to what is provided for us or even forced upon us through the traditional food system. So we are aware of that happening, and I think that allows independence, of course, in choice and preference, but independence and resources when things get tight. If there's a food shortage, we'll at least have our micro farms. And so we should really continue to invest in that, and it'll make the whole city stronger.
Thank you, Jamiah. Marta?
I'm just going to relay back to what Michael and Jamiah are talking about, because I actually forgot the original question. I want to say it's absolutely true that we need to become less dependent on imported water. And the city of LA, fortunately, has begun to pilot this membrane bioreactive technology, where it recycles and reuses, our water that goes to the Hyperion water facility and other water facilities that we have throughout the city. And the beauty of that is it's going to definitely decrease our dependence on imported water. But I think that it needs to go along with a very visible narrative that efforts like community gardening and soil composting and resilience hubs are also going to make this collaborative effort to reduce the use of imported water. And I guess I'll just make a plug right here that there is a desalination plant that's being proposed, for example. I see that as an extractive model, or I see this recycling of and reclaimed water as a regenerative model, and micro farming and soil composting is regenerative. So we really need to start categorizing our future investments and our future initiatives in terms of extractive versus regenerative. And if something is taking water from the ocean, you have to ask yourself why that is extractive. Because we do have issues of coastal pollution. Number two, it's going to affect the ecosystems near the ocean's shores. And number three, it's going to make water increasingly expensive for low-income communities, and UCLA did a study for that. And the reason that I say that is because it's been a very hard and difficult conversation to have, that we really need to focus on these regenerative models, and the city has been investing in them. And the whole reason we can have farming in an urban area now is because city policies were created to allow for that to happen. I think at least 10 years ago, that wasn't even a possibility. But we had to change land use and zoning codes in order to make that happen. And I guess the other thing that I'm saying here is it's a partnership. Yes, it's true that sometimes leaders sound a little too visionary and a little too outside of the box for the city. But the result of pushing those visions is actually bringing change to the way that the city does things. And that's been my inspiration, seeing leaders such as Michael and Jamiah giving a model, giving it a very visual, tangible, real model for how things can be and should be. And I'm really encouraged by that. And that's what our office is here to promote as well. Like these visionary leadership models that promote regenerative practices so that the city can move in that direction.
Thank you so much, Marta, for that. I just have to say that I have so many more questions for you three. And what I know for sure through these visionary structures that you all have, through the leadership that you have, that I know you guys will always continuously be communicating for that greater LA that we're creating in regards to community engagement, really shifting the power of very much social cohesion. So I have so many more questions, but I know that you all are handling it even more so. So I'm gonna now step into, we were planning for you all three to ask each other a question, but there is an audience question, and our cutoff time was supposed to be 10:50, but they're allowing us till 11. So I just want to be mindful of time. So the question is from Amy Flournoy. Hopefully I pronounced your last name correctly. Her question is, what are some simple first steps each of us can do now on a local level to make an impact in our community to address things like food insecurity and mental awareness? So I'll leave it to any of you to answer. Go ahead.
I think one thing, there's so many things that you can do. I think the examples given here today are phenomenal examples. I would get involved with LA Compost. I wouldn't get involved with Crop Swap LA. But as far as the city goes, there's a lot of programs, like you can request a free street tree. You can request a rain barrel if you want to start your own community garden. You can get more involved with like the local networks of organizations that are already creating resilience hubs. And really, it's just a matter of following visionary leaders that are in your community and collaborating with them. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. I think it does take extra effort and time to find the resources that you need, but please feel free to call our office. I think that's one thing I'm really good at, is connecting people to resources and resources to people. So feel free to connect with our office at the city, and I'd be happy to connect you with efforts in your community that you're passionate about.
Yeah, to echo on what Marta said, I'm a very huge fan of like identifying gaps of knowledge and identifying what you don't know, because I still don't know a lot of things that have to do with compost, soil health, and the food movement. But I think to Marta's point, there's a ton of resources from the city and county and everything in between, from like street trees to compost bins to native plants to how-to guides to people that have been doing it and have been learning by doing for quite a long time. And on that second part of contributing to mental health and like this mental awareness, I think mental health, I think, is affected by a lot of things. But for me, what allows someone to experience joy, care, compassion, grace, like a lot of these things, sometimes we feel are void in our neighborhoods. And when I go to certain neighborhoods, I very much have a different feeling because I'm walking in the shade, or I'm hearing birds or pollinators, or I'm seeing like beauty. And how do we create that in our neighborhoods, in our places that we call home? And how do we ensure that that beauty and joy is created by other folks who call that place home? And I would encourage you to identify where you see beauty in your neighborhood and how can you translate that across your neighborhood as well. So, yeah.
And my quick note on this is the best thing you can do is find your source of abundance, something that is abundant in your life, and find a way to give it away to somebody. Just feels good.
Wow. So this has been a tremendous panel. Thank you, Marta. Thank you, Jamiah. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much, audience, for being part of this conversation and contributing and giving kudos to all three of them. For sure, their cooperative models have changed LA. For sure, their leadership has created access from food apartheid. For sure, their leadership is changing our LA for our community of color. So thank you so much. So off to the next one, guys. And thank you again. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta.
Thank you, Patty. Talk to you later.